So you all were waiting for Lisa, who is on her way. She will be here. But let's use this time to just check in. How are things going with accessing course content, readings? Are you getting messages? That's all going okay? Okay, great, great. Hello, Jem.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thanks.
There are seats waiting for you.
Fantastic.
So everybody's okay getting access to information, updates? Yeah? Perfect, okay. So there are new guidelines that are up on Canvas under files. So if you go under files, there's a folder called assignments, and in there are guidelines for your reflection paper. And I did not include a template or an example for the reflection paper. They are 2 to 4 pages double-spaced. They are truly choose a reading or readings that capture you, that engage you, that you get excited by. And they can be readings at any time during the course. But I am assuming, simply given how busy all of your lives are, that you will use a reading that we've already read for class. And so this will be due the 4th week of class at midnight. You can always submit earlier. I am not a terrific stickler for deadlines in this class, and I will tell you why. Because I'm much more interested in the quality of your work and in your thinking than in whether or not you have met some deadline. And part of that also is that we're all adults and we're all here because we care to be, and we also have very big lives where we have other things that are going on. And I'm aware of that. The one thing I do ask of all of you is that if you communicate with me, if you know that you're going to or think that you are going to go past a deadline. And the only reason is because that impacts my planning for grading. And so, like all of you, I need to carve out when I'm going to be grading, and it helps me wrap my mind around that. So, please check out the guidelines when you have a chance. We'll talk about them in more depth next week, but truly this is a fairly straightforward paper. What makes it unique is that you all get to choose, I mean, it's a critical paper, but you're engaging with it and bringing in your own experience and insights. So each of your papers will be really unique because you will have your own perspectives, and it doesn't have to be perspective informed by any particular role, for instance, as an educational leader. Many of you are educational leaders. If that is something that informs your critical engagement with a reading, fantastic. But all of you have so much that you're bringing to this. Just go ahead and respond to the readings in terms of what you think is valuable, what you think is not, from your own perspective. Okay. So we were reviewing the syllabus last week, and one of the things that I had mentioned is that much of the work will be in small groups in this class, and increasingly as we go, we'll have more and more small groups so that you all have a chance to talk with one another. So we will do that. Goodness, it is ugly out there. It's so blustery. Woo. So all of this is to say that we will begin today. So Lisa Sequeira is coming and she will speak with us, and I'll chime in a little bit. There are some concepts in particular related to how she'll chat with us about neuroscience and the brain and learning, and there's some really tons of implications, but there are some that in particular I am going to tease out that are related to some of our readings for today. And then we'll have time for small group discussion, where all of you will speak with one another about some questions and some prompts that allow you kind of to start tying together some of the ideas from different readings. Yeah? Okay, any questions about any of that? All right. Well, Lisa is on her way, and I'm just going to check in the event she got stuck somewhere. So we knew it's happening. She's trying to park, and I'm trying to give her the secret in where to go. Okay, so one thing that I'd like to do with the time we have, that I always like to do at the beginning of class, and we did not have time last time, which is, I'm going to pull out the syllabus. I'd like us to take turns reading the equity, diversity, and inclusion statement here. Unless this is Lisa, in which case we'll dive in. All right, table this, we'll come back to it. Hi, so good to see you.
Oh, wow.
I know. We were just looking outside at how awful it is. Good to see you. We'll take a minute and arrive. I know. Have some tea. Thank you. Yeah. I know I'm in good company when I say, you've had those days where you just feel like you just barely skid into home base. Yes. Yeah. I've had one of those weeks. There you go. I know I'm probably in good company with this crowd. I know you can all relate. So have a seat. I'm actually going to go sit down next to Carla. Okay. Yeah. And actually, maybe I'll stay up here with you because we have a student, Candelas, who's on his way. He has a meeting. Okay. And he's going to scoot in, and probably will feel more comfortable if all of us are not going. Sure. So can we do this? Can we have all of us introduce? Okay, Gracie, you can read to us, or change it, make it better. So just for the sake of time, because there's so much we're going to talk about, I'm really excited. Can we start with Zoom? And can all of us, for introductions, say, and then we'll come to all of us in the room, just say your name, say your department in which you're studying, and say one thing you do when you're really stressed to just bring your stress level down. Just one thing. All right, so y'all, I know Zoom is wiggly and squirrely and tends to move around a lot. Do you want all of you to just chime in when you're ready? Can we do it that way, or do you want me to call on you?
I think it's easier for you to call on us so we don't jump in on each other.
Okay, perfect. So in that case, my eyesight is not the best, so I'm going to be right here. All right, I'm going to call on you. So Molly, can we start with you? Name, department, something you do to de-stress.
My name is Molly Anderson. I'm first year in the Edld program, and de-stress, go on a walk.
Aha, Joel. Thanks, Molly.
Hi, Lisa. It's Joel Sebastian. I'm year 1 in the Edld program, and to de-stress, I like to drink a large cup of coffee.
Joel, is this like Joel from Candy?
It is.
Hey, hi Joel. He was
Hi.
my daughter's middle school principal. Oh, Michelle.
Great to see you.
You too. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, everybody. Michelle Marshall. I'm doing my Pro AL right now, elementary principal. When I am really stressed, I probably go for a walk. That might be something.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Breaths. Make a joke.
Oh, boy, that's a nice reminder. Yes. Susie.
Last year, a DED student, and let's see, when I'm stressed out, I like to go for a hike with my dog.
Bless our animals. Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh. I'm working on my Pro AL, and when I'm stressed, really my life revolves around my kids at this point. So my oldest just started baseball, so we go outside and we play catch and hit a ball around.
Thanks, Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Laxton. I'm a first year DED student in the EMPL department. I don't know, I just breathe, I suppose, to de-stress.
It's a good one. When we remember to do it. Melissa.
Oh, hello everyone. I'm Melissa Sandvin. I'm also first year DED with the EMPL program, and I usually, to de-stress, I go for a run with my dog.
Thanks. Nubia.
Hi, I'm in the DED program as well, and usually I like to talk to someone, and then usually once I talk about it, I realize it's not as bad or impossible as I think it is. Like once I say it out loud, once I talk to someone about whatever's stressing me, I realize it doesn't sound so bad. So.
Thanks. Vanessa?
Hi, I'm Vanessa Santillan, and I'm in the first year of my MS EMPL program. And something I do to distress is I shop a lot. For others.
Consumer therapy. Does it say retail? Yeah, retail therapy?
Yes.
Thanks. Erin?
Hi, everybody. I'm first year EMPL DED program, and I am a napper.
Juan?
Hey, I'm Ron. I'm in the sped doctor program. Sorry. And I de-stress by going. Sorry. I don't know if you heard any of that.
I love the demonstration of the stress increaser decreaser.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Lillian?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Juan. Yeah. Can you tell us more about you? I apologize. It was barreling through.
Oh yeah, sorry, the dog. I'm in this doctoral program, and I de-stress by going to the gym, which I'll probably do after this, because they're running around everywhere.
And Juan, did you tell us your program?
Yeah, the SPED doctoral program.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Hi, Lillian.
Hi. So I'm a first year student in the DED EMPL program. And to de-stress, I either go outside and go for a walk or hug my dog.
Thanks. Trevor.
Trevor Flaherty, first year DED program. And I'm a Lego nut, so I build Legos whenever I'm stressed.
Nice. We're going to ask for some demonstrations of this de-stressing at some point, Trevor. Oh! Ooh. Wow. Is that a pagoda?
It is. It's from the Ninjago series. It's a pretty cool series. It's awesome.
Oh, goodness gracious.
But I don't
Thank
really care. I do them all. My daughter, she's really into the Friends ones. My son likes the Star Wars. I mean, I like all of them.
Uh-huh. Oh, the things that going to school drives us to. It's awesome. Tom.
Name is Tom Charbonneau. I'm a first year doctorate in the EMPL program. And to de-stress, I typically go for walks. The more scenic, the better.
Nice. Ben.
Hi, Ben Bentia. Last class for my PAL, and to de-stress, anything in the outdoors, go out hiking, fishing, anything like that.
Great. Heather.
I'm Heather Bailey, first year DED student, and to distress, I should say that I go running, but that's not the answer. It is, I like to find online shopping deals. So I find random things and have them sent to school, and my secretary laughs at me. So that's how I distress.
Oh, the honesty is so refreshing. I'm with you. Wendy.
Hi, I'm Wendy Roberts, and I'm in the continuing admin licensure program, and I de-stress by going out for really long walks.
Thank you. And forgive me, I'm still learning everybody's name, and your login is LJFOL.
Hi, that's Linda.
Hi, Linda. Thank you.
I'm going to keep it real. A bag of potato chips and a glass of red wine.
Thank you, Linda.
Like I said, I should go on a walk or I should exercise, but really, it's a bag of potato chips and a glass of red wine.
Thanks, Linda. All right. Now, did I get everybody? Yes? All right. Hi, everybody. Can we start with you, Junjin?
Yeah.
And move and work our way around?
I'm Tommy, a first year student in this program. My distress way is watching Korean TVs, which help me to come out of my brain from English environment. Yeah.
My name is Alyssa. I'm a first year in the Nonprofit Management Master's program, and I like to de-stress by listening to podcasts.
I'm Mackenzie Lynn. I'm a second year Docs Ed student, and to de-stress, I listen to music or podcasts.
I'm Lisbeth. I'm a second year school studies PhD student, and to de-stress, I think a lot of what people already shared. So I like to go for walks with my dog or listen to music, sometimes watch TV.
My name's Carla, and I'm in the Cal Pal program. And to de-stress, I do hot yoga. And that's when I have time, which is, I make time because I can't do my job without it. I'd be in a straitjacket. Or deep breathing in the moment, mindfulness. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bernice. First year student in the Edld program. If I'm stressed, I either watch Spanish movies that I don't understand, but I don't, yeah, it's not like translated or anything. I just watch it and, just to learn something new, to take my mind off what I'm thinking about, or shopping, like somebody else. Window shopping, not necessarily buying anything, but just going through the stores and just, so whenever I need it, I know where to go. So, yeah.
I think that's called planning.
Right.
Oh,
Great. If I'm stressed, I plan.
It just makes you more efficient when you get time.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm Jill Elizabeth. I'm in the Edld program. De-stressing, I don't do that very well. And when I'm really, really stressed, I put on music, but it has to be like extremely, extremely loud. And then I dance around like a crazy person. It's really fun. And then my kids will come in and be like, "Mom, turn that down." And I'll be like, "No, dance with me." And then they'll run the other way.
I'm Andy. I'm in the Pro-Al, I think that's what they're calling it these days. And de-stress, I swim or sit in a dark room with Miles Davis.
Oh, he's good company.
I'm Lisa, and I am not in a program. Well, I'm applying to a program. I think one of the strategies I've tried this year that really is proving to be beneficial is I've got a couple different meditation apps on my phone. And I have a zero gravity chair that I sit in and just do some deep breathing, do some guided meditation. No technology for like an hour before bed.
And I'm Heather, and I take a page on Jill's book. My daughter is 7, and we watch So You Think You Can Dance videos on YouTube and have dance parties. And we're into grand jetés, usually off furniture. Yeah, I just injured myself last week.
No.
It's not fun though. It helps with stress release. So, did you want to say a little more about your current position and
Sure.
what you bring to the
Yes. So I come to education through kind of a non-traditional route. My degree is in clinical mental health counseling. I'm currently working as a guidance counselor / psychology teacher at a charter school. So it's very small K-12 school. Previously I taught at George Fox in their social emotional behavior program. So I've got some college teaching experience, and now I get K-12 teaching and interaction experience. So I'm coming at education, my passion that I can't seem to get away from is interpersonal neurobiology. I'm fundamentally intrigued with how the brain works and how we became who and how we are. So it's been fun applying it to education.
So I wanted to start, so Lisa, I've boiled down what I sent you to just 2 slides.
Oh, wow.
But well, they're all at the end. We can go back to them.
Okay.
I really wanted to foreground you.
Okay.
So Lisa and I were chatting. So Lisa, Tom, I imagine you recognize Lisa. So Lisa presented in our class last term. And I just think your perspectives are so important because they are about our brains and about insights into neuroscience and how that fundamentally influences how we learn and how we learn with.
Yes.
And so the only things I wanted to say to kind of paint a larger picture around the insights that Lisa will share with us are that when we think about education and learning, we can think about it in a broad frame which can be thought of as the context in which we live, the context in which we learn, in which we are. So in the work that comes from social determinants of health, there was a very large regression study that was done out of Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. And what they determined, what they were doing is they were looking at predictors of chronic disease. And one of the things that they identified is that there are all of these factors that go into what make us sick, right? And one of the things that they determined is that it actually, the social factors in our lives, the quality of our social interactions, it's not just the quality of our social relationships. All of us, when we think about the things that keep us healthy, many of you also mentioned, Nubia was talking about having a really rich conversation with someone she trusts. Yeah, having that good conversation, getting support, whether it's from people, from animals, however we do it, that we are evolutionarily designed to connect. Yeah, especially when in stress, that can be something that can really help us, that can reduce our stress. One of the things that there's increasing information about, and Lisa will talk us through quite a bit of it today, are the roles of social interactions in our lives. And it goes beyond social support. It goes beyond our relationships with our lovies, with our most intimate people, as well as our coworkers, the people we have the most long-standing and enduring relationships with. The quality of our momentary social interactions with one another can be profound. And so sorry gang. Y'all, when I do goofball things like that, just tell me I'm being a goofball. I'll be like, the screen is blank. There we go. There is an image. Yes. So here it simply shows that in these large national, in this regression analysis, where they took all of them, pulled all of these factors in a really large epidemiological study that looked at what predicts health, looking at some very identifiable chronic diseases. They found there are all of these important contributors, right? They're puzzle pieces. But what really emerged as extremely important were the social conditions of our lives. And when we think about social determinants, we can think about all of the factors that shape our everyday experience. And I want to encourage all of us to think this broadly, because I think often when we think about children who are struggling, it's so easy to locate it in the bodies of these little people, right? And it's so much bigger than these little bodies. It's so much bigger than all of our big bodies around the table and on Zoom. We are embedded within larger systems of meaning, larger histories that predate us and will go well beyond us, that deeply intersect with our everyday experiences. And it's very, very easy to personalize problems and to psychopathologize distress and challenge, but that really we are all within this very complex system of relationships that social determinants of health are focused on. And really, truly, I mean, they're everything from neighborhood conditions to the conditions of our schools to the well-being of our families, but they also relate to all of the conditions that allow us to fully be present when we learn, or to shut down because it's a threat. And this then leads to Lisa's beautiful.
Can you go back one slide just a bit?
Sure.
So one of the things that I will talk about, notice how 5% of it is genetic and 55% is social conditions. One of the things that we will somewhere get to, and what I'm going to share is the fact that experience literally creates brain architecture. Our experiences turn on and off different genetic expressions. So even genes are our potential. We're born with potential, but our every single experience, and particularly our early experiences, our experiences and our contexts, our genes are wired to wait for that and turn on or off. So,
and I would say if we wrap in that 30%, which is behavior,
right,
in a health model, here people are thinking of things like cigarette smoking or walking with our dog. But if we fold all of that together into lived experience, all of a sudden we're talking about 85%.
All the rest.
Yes, yeah. There was a comment on Zoom.
Hey, Heather?
Yes.
Yeah, I was hoping just to make a comment there. I don't know if anybody's had any experience with it, but and I expect a lot of districts are heavily focused on work with trauma-informed practices and ACEs and all that kind of stuff. But there was a really great activity that we found to help kind of paint the picture of exactly what she just described. Shaping the brain from birth, and it's out of the Harvard School of Education, I think. But it's called the Brain Architecture Game. So if anybody has a chance to do it, if you Google it, it's about an hour and 15-minute activity where you can actually buy kits, or actually you can go get the materials yourself, but it actually is a tangible learning opportunity for staff to engage in, to really understand that concept that the social conditions actually do shape brain development.
Oh, how beautiful, Trevor. Thank you. I'm noting that. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually going to sit right here so I can advance the slides.
Okay, and where did we decide if I start feeling the impulse to draw again?
Oh, if you want to
Where
draw, let's set you up right here.
Okay.
So because Adam can project this.
Okay.
Adam, I'm hoping that I'm saying the right thing. I know you're very visual.
I am.
I know. That's good. That's great.
And I'm a mover.
You're a mover and a shaker, lady.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I'll deal with this if you want.
And then
I'll set it up.
Do you have my slide deck?
It's all woven in.
Perfect.
Although, there we go. It's being funny.
So I'm gonna change up my presentation a little bit, because last time I got to do this, I was given an hour and a half, and the class was very gracious to let me talk for 3 hours.
Well, we had a really engaging conversation. So
Yes.
chime in.
So I'm gonna try and tailor it a bit. What's the next? Okay, I want to skip this part. Maybe we can come back. This one.
Oh, yeah.
This one. Okay. So like I said, one of my favorite things is interpersonal neurobiology, and really in straightforward talk, that literally means how brains are built through relationship. So want to talk just a little bit about, when you look at these two pictures, what stands out? Just off the top of your head, not really quite knowing where I'm going with this yet, what instantly hits you?
One's dry and one's well watered.
Mm-hmm. Whose fault? It's the plant's fault. Which plant did better? All by itself.
Watered and nourished.
Okay. Watered and nourished. Does it happen to be because it's a indoor plant versus an outdoor plant? Does that have anything to do with it? Is it the type of plant that makes this one better? Quiet group. Okay. I'm gonna liven you guys up. One of the things, Lisa, I love that you said last time is, you said, look at this plant. This plant here that's dry. What did it do? What did it do to be so dry? I was like, let's be nice to the plant, right? No. Right? Yeah, is this plant being disrespectful? Is this plant just being lazy? Is it just trying to get out a living? I mean, how many times do we hear teachers use that words of, they're just lazy, they're just disrespectful, they're just trying to get out of this activity. Okay, so yes, what key pieces does a biological system need to thrive? If you imagine, this plant knows what to do. It's genetic, all the genetic information is there. It knows what to do. It will do what it can do. If what?
Oh, if its needs are being met, so obviously it's not receiving the nutrients it needs.
And that depends on?
Well, somebody needs the relationships to take care of it. It needs someone to take care of it.
Yes, so sunlight, water, soil. Okay, so imagine if those components are like positive experiences in our life, the warmth of trusted, loving relationships, the rich, diverse nutrients in the soil that give us lots of different experiences. The water just being, just a constant flow of kind of movement in life. And so what I want you guys to kind of catch here is that we come 5% of our genetics. We come genetically ready. We come expecting, we're born expecting experience. We're literally wired for survival. We're expecting our caregivers, our parents, to nurture us, to snuggle us, love us, make eye contact. We are biologically ready and waiting for care. And when we get that, we thrive, we do great. When we don't, or it's limited or spotty, all of our potential is still there, but we got some needs going on that here. Okay. So what conditions might the brain be expecting in order to grow? I gave you a few.
Basic needs, kind of like Maslow's hierarchy, those physiological needs: food, water, shelter, safety.
Safety. Mm-hmm. Okay, basic needs.
Social emotional connection, building relationship. reading this article, it kind of talked about that being more important on the triangle than food and water even.
So imagine baby's born, and it is biologically expecting. I mean, it's absolutely helpless, right? It's biologically expecting that the parent is going to respond and care for its needs. And when that doesn't happen, it hits a raw survival instinct it's highly potent. It's meant to keep us safe and for survival, but because it's so potent, it's also highly toxic. So we'll talk about that in a bit. So I want you to imagine your baby Susie, put yourself in the mind of an infant. You're born, and you've got two parent entities. They're financially secure. You've got grandparents who are so excited to meet you. They are stable and they can babysit and let the parents take breaks. Mom, primary caregiver, is attentive and lots of snuggling and tender touch and eye contact. Imagine you or her. Fill in these blanks. I feel what?
Loved.
Safe.
Oh, happy.
Happy. Relaxed. Oh, life is good. Okay, therefore, I am what? Important.
Capable.
What was that?
Capable.
Capable. Yep, I can handle my world because it's pretty good.
I'm also smart and I'm learning a lot every day.
I can handle this. Ooh, this is fun. Here's a new toy. I can chew on it. I can make it move to my mouth. I can do things. All right, so then caregivers are what?
Essential.
Essential. Yeah, absolutely.
Providing me with the support I need.
They're capable. They're competent. You can rely on them.
Present.
Yeah, trustworthy. Okay, so life is what? Safe.
Predictable.
Predictable. Yep, when I get hungry, look at that. Food appears. When I'm tired, I get to fall asleep in a safe place. Predictable. Life's pretty sweet, right? Like, I can handle this. This is good. I can go explore my world because I know I'm safe. My needs are met. I can be creative. All right. So, just as you kind of sit with how that feels, contrast that with baby Joe. Baby Joe, he's born, let's say maybe teenage parent, teenage daughter or mom. She's now struggling with the boyfriend's angry because now there's a child in the picture. They're constantly arguing. Mom's distracted because, darn it, she really wanted to go to the prom, but now she can't because she has to stay home with baby. Mom's constantly frustrated. Maybe the grandparents are, every time the mom wants to go out, grandma's yelling and it's a conflict and there's tension. So lots of tension, anger going on. What does baby Joe feel?
Anxious.
Afraid. Ignored. Unloved. Unloved, potentially.
Maybe guilty.
Maybe. What have I done wrong? Because we're pretty egocentric as babies. What did I do wrong?
Insecure.
Insecure. Yep. Where is this place I have now come? This doesn't feel so good. So conclusions, maybe I am
a barrier.
Okay. A hindrance. A nuisance.
Scared.
Scared. Okay, what are some assumptions that are being built into his system about caregivers?
Overwhelmed.
Unavailable.
Unavailable.
Maybe
Inconsistent.
under-equipped.
Unreliable. Sometimes there, sometimes not. When they're there, they might be angry.
Lacking skills.
Untrusted.
So life is what for Baby Joe?
Toxic.
Difficult. Hard.
Unpredictable.
Hard. His whole
Unpredictable.
system is developing in a context that has nothing, it's not his fault. He didn't create it. Exactly. Choices of the adults or young adults in his life. So how does that, in your own physical being, how does that feel compared to what it felt like to be baby Susie? Stressful. Mm-hmm. And is it baby Susie's fault? Baby Joe's fault? Who's the baby Susie do anything to earn that privilege? Baby Joe do anything to earn his situation?
I think sometimes kids are.
No. Okay. So, considering what those two different scenarios, go back to the plant, and maybe would you add anything to the conditions that a brain needs in order to thrive? That a child might need in order to thrive? Chat, just turn to your partner. Chat, what was the experience like for you? Did thinking in those terms, did it add any new information for you? What was the experience like? Just like a few minutes.
Maybe we could all talk as a group, just because on Zoom, it's hard to do the partner talks. So maybe just as a large group, we can brainstorm some responses.
Mm-hmm.
Trusted adult relationships are needed for.
The parent, one thing I'm continually struck by are how important it is to catch my daughter being good, as opposed to being attentive and present when she does something to get my attention in a way that might be disruptive. And just thinking about all the lessons that we learn and that we teach as parents.
Yeah. How much of life is just caught? You know, I mean, those two, Susie and Joe, they were just catching all the stuff that was flying around them. And yet, I mean, one of the things we'll get into is how that literally is translated into brain architecture and then our physiological system and who we become and our assumptions later in life. And
but as parents, the behaviors we're reinforcing. So when my daughter raises her voice and raises the volume, am I reinforcing that by being more attentive? Or when she speaks with a quiet voice, am I reinforcing that as well by being equally attentive? What kinds of architecture does that create in her brain that has implications for when she goes to school? Even though at this point she's only a few months old. I do think about that as a parent, because we're the ones creating these environments in which our little ones are forming their brains, and it's a massive
Unfortunately, a common sentiment I hear is, well, they don't know, they're too young. Or sad one I hear is, well, you're gonna get divorced when they're really young because they won't remember. Or, it's the assumption that when kids are little, they don't know better, so it doesn't impact them, so it's okay. Any initial responses to being baby Susie or baby Joe?
He's a married person with 2 boys, I have 2. And I'm having friends not saying, having kids and stuff like that. I know that from hearing from a lot of married friends, you realize that like the effects of like an upbringing or the home where a spouse was born in affects, like you said, we're going to discuss all of that, but you realize like there are traits and there are certain characteristics where somebody will say something like, oh my God, that sounds like my husband, or oh my God, that sounds like my wife. And then you look into it and you realize this person was born in a home that was not stable, or this person was born in a family where the parents are still together today, and so having kids now, I see that, and so I know that there's a lot that when I do is going to affect my children in the future. They're going to be that wife, or they're going to be that husband who is going to be torment their wives, or it's going to be a good husband. It's just knowing that it's like it's a huge pressure on me that I'm growing men, that I'm going to be husband and boyfriends, or who knows what it used to be, but it's a huge responsibility on me. And I'm talking to my friends, like at this point we are all like, who are we raising? And it's really the environment, and how do we nurture these kids to be good adults in the future? Because talking to my friends, I realized that it's just from husband and wife, and just knowing the kind of homes they came from, and the traits are just there. It doesn't go away.
And it's not just how we directly relate with our children, it's how we model relationships for our children.
Yeah, we're not raising a child, we're raising a human being.
Yeah, it's like knowing that from the beginning that this person is, you're raising an adult. They're going to grow up, and whatever you're raising is that it's what is going to produce in the future. It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. I guess I think about it in the sense like we are kind of privileged to have that conversation and be able to think about the fact that I think about it a lot. I don't have kids yet, but I want to have kids. And so when I think about how I want to raise my children and what types of behaviors I want to model, that there's people who are in so much stress and like maybe because of poverty or experiencing things like racism or other stuff, depending, or maybe they lived in an unsafe neighborhood where there's constant stress coming in, and so they may not even think of, they can't stop to think, how am I going to parent, how am I going to model behavior for my child, and so if they're constantly in a state of fear, they may be conveying that in modeling that for their kids. So.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you guys have picked up on it, but I've intentionally been asking the question, whose fault? Because that's really the wrong question to ask. It isn't a fault. We need to take that question and even that word maybe out of our vocabulary, because once you understand the impact of development, you understand the story of how and why the story repeats itself, and how, I mean, poor, baby Joe's mom, she's probably doing the best she can, and she has reasons in her development that got her to where she is, and so it's to understand a huge privilege it is to even have a moment, to have a kind of a meta awareness of the impact you're having on your child versus just raw survival and trying to get through life. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Any other pressing thoughts you just gotta say?
I think there's,
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. I don't know her name, but the person who just spoke, like that's what I was thinking the whole time as well.
Lisbeth.
Oh, hi, Elizabeth. Yeah.
And Bernice.
I was thinking that as well, and I was just mostly thinking about the reading we did and the whole speaking without thinking. I feel like I can relate to speaking without thinking when I'm stressed. And then the damage you cause when you speak without thinking, and then thinking about my own parents and the times they've probably yelled at me without thinking just because they were so stressed, and the self-esteem issues it put in me, you know, and just how that just is so, I guess, unintentional in a way, you know, and people do that all the time. You know, they speak without thinking because of the stress overcomes them. And so it's like no one's really totally at fault, you know, we're all just like in that fight or flight mode, and then we're projecting it and affecting other people.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about why that is.
Linda, were you going to say something as well?
Yeah, I was just concerned, or, you know, my kids are grown and 30 or so years old, and I think that we have to remember too that there's more to this than just how we raise our kids. Because I have 3 brothers, and we are all completely different children, all raised by a mother and father who've been married for 60 years. We've all gone to college, and one of my brothers is just not on the same level. I'm trying to be nice, not the same as the rest of us. And sometimes I think we're putting a huge amount of guilt on young parents sometimes to think that every child is going to turn out the same way just because you do the same things. And I hate for us to discount the other factors that influence child development and put it all on what we say and do for our kids when they're very young. Because there's a lot of other things that change the picture for kids at very early ages, even though they're raised in the exact same environment with the exact same principles and values and everything else. And I just don't want to put that guilt on parents, or that pressure. That's the only reason why kids turn out successful. That isn't.
Very true. And I also want to say, another saying that gets me is, wow, I don't understand how Johnny is this way and Julie is this way. They have the same parents and come from the same family, the same. It's like, no child has the same parents. You have a firstborn that you're the first time parents, and you don't know what's going on, and you don't understand. Oh, they're only 2. They're not gonna sit still. There's so much you don't know when you're a first time parent. Second child comes along, you're a little more relaxed as a parent, but attention is divided. I mean, so no child gets the same parent, which impacts. And the more you understand what we're about to unpack, the freedom, hopefully you will get is, I hope it will release you from, blame is awfully strong, but it isn't blaming the parents, it's understanding the cycle. And it hopefully will invite you and enable you to be a lot more compassionate, because there's a whole dynamic cycle that plays in. So yes, intent is not to blame parents, but to find reasons and explanations and identify needs that maybe have been unmet, so we can come alongside and support parents and meet needs. So what we are going to talk about is the three brain concept. By now we're pretty familiar with the whole left-right brain thing, right? The 70s brought us that, and they've dialed that one in pretty well. What we're now understanding is the impact of our three brains, so the neocortex, limbic region, and brainstem. They're all functionally unique. They're collaborative, but functionally unique. So at birth, you have fully mature brainstem at full-term birth that governs vital organs, heart rate, breathing, sleep cycle, all of that. It's 100% unconscious. Recently read a book, Molecules of Emotion, where the most simple sentence blew my mind. It said the body is the unconscious mind. We're going to unpack that a little bit. But brainstem is at full-term birth, fully functional, vital organs, completely unconscious. The next part of the brain that is fully functional at birth is the limbic region. Are anybody familiar with Dan Siegel's hand model? Or Dan Siegel, yeah? So if you think of the palm of your brain as or palm of your hand as a brain model, this is your brain stem and spinal cord. This would be your limbic region. It's right there at the top of the brain stem, and then your neocortex wraps around. So limbic region here, also fully functional at birth, but waiting for experience to inform it on threat, not threatening, survival, not threat. So that's where our fight or flight system is housed. It runs our emotional system, which we also know now is just it's an information system. It's our alarm system. And then the neocortex at birth, it is just a bundle of potential. Billions of single cells just waiting for experience to make connections. So you've heard the child, they know better, they know what to do. That knowing, the facts, the information, that's housed in our neocortex, which, we'll get to a timeline here, develops very slowly. But if you remember too from Baby Susie and Baby Joe, the right hemisphere of their limbic region is the one this is where right and left comes in. Right hemisphere of that limbic region is the one that's most alert and working. The whole right hemisphere is utterly designed for the holistic, the mood, the vibe. It's just absorbing information from the environment, emotional information from the environment. So the limbic region it's absorbing that information and setting tones for the rest of life. So that then feeds, the limbic region ties into the brain stem, which sends down the information through the autonomic nervous system. So bring up this one here. So limbic region is that darker blue in the middle of the brain there. It physically, they're called feelings because we feel them. It sends chemical messengers, information to our body that says, this is a threat, trigger our stress system. Those chemicals are highly potent. They are very effective. They are so effective, however, that prolonged stress, prolonged assessment of a threatening environment becomes toxic, and that those chemicals literally start disintegrating our hippocampus, which is the seat of new learning, also in the limbic region. Baby Susie, she got to grow and develop, and her right brain limbic region came into this world in her parasympathetic, relaxed. Life is good. She gets the privilege of exploring, being creative, because she's good. Whereas baby Joe, his system was born into a context that was constantly, so it's sending messages, heart, lungs, digestive system. It's physically constructing almost an atmosphere in the body, a chemical atmosphere in the body. It sets a tone and it sets sensitivities to the environment. So imagine again, baby Joe, if we decided his assumptions of caregivers are, they're not very reliable, kind of untrustworthy. In a child's mind, a caregiver can be translated to authority figure. So now you put that child in a classroom, teacher is the authority figure, and all of those sensitivities and awarenesses come into the room, and they're going to be hyper-vigilant. What's the timeline next? This is where I get to start. Oh, I gotta open
This is where it gets.
Okay. So,
Can we use this timeline instead, or is that?
So, we all can imagine a line. So, we'll use our imagination. So again, at birth, 0 to 2, and even prenatal, mom's level of stress and the cortisol that's streaming through her system is sensitizing baby's system to that sets the tone and the normal. So if there's a lot of cortisol in the system, it sensitizes that baby's system to be really, really sensitive to stress hormones. Okay, yes?
Can I provide an example?
Yes.
So there is a biological anthropologist named Zane Thayer, who is at Dartmouth. We almost got her here, but we didn't. And she's amazing. So Dr. Thayer, Zane, for her dissertation, she's also a geneticist. So she was studying the impacts of social interactions on physiology. So how does stress get under the skin to influence us? She worked in New Zealand, and New Zealand is in parts of New Zealand, particularly the North Island, is fairly diverse in terms of Maori, who are indigenous New Zealanders, with immigrants and refugees who come to New Zealand from various islands, and then with Anglo-origin New Zealanders. And so she did a study of pregnant moms. And what she did is she asked about their exposure to discrimination, stress on the basis of race and ethnicity. And she looked at the exposure of moms, and the only criteria, the only requirement for enrollment was that when their babies were born, that she would be allowed to collect saliva from the baby's mouths before they were inoculated at 3 months of birth, but if they had their first vaccine, and there are public health clinics, so all of healthcare is free. And before the injection and after the injection, because it's a way to test a stressor to the baby, and the baby's recovery from that stress. So part of what can erode, that Lisa's talking about, is our ability to recover quickly when we experience stress. Because when we're exposed to a lot of stress over time, our ability to recover can be affected. And it's harder and harder for us physiologically and thus emotionally, etc., to recover when we've experienced an insult. Right? Whether it's social, whether it's physical, etc., it's all intertwined. What Dr. Thayer found
is that the moms who reported in the 3 months prior to delivery being treated unfairly as they perceived on the basis of their race or ethnicity, when their babies were born and she took a saliva swab before and after the injection, there was a significant difference among those 3-month-old babies in how quickly they recovered, in terms of how quickly their cortisol went back to baseline in response to the shot. Because what happened is they had a baseline cortisol, then they got a shot, whoop, up with their cortisol, she took the swab, waited half an hour later, took another cortisol swab. So how quickly did those babies' bodies get back to baseline? And the babies whose mothers had been treated unfairly, those babies took longer to recover. So how we are with one another, how we relate fundamentally. The reason I was showing this social determinants of learning is because social inequality gets under our skin in very real ways. Yeah, literally, in very real ways. And it may not even get under our skin, it may get under our mother's skin when we're being grown within her. So as a society, we have tremendous opportunities through addressing, through equitable solutions, persistent social inequities. Another way of thinking about Dr. Thayer's work, Zane's work, is look at this astounding opportunity we have as a society to be equitable in our practices, because we could even impact the ability of babies to recover quickly from inoculations. How profound is that? Right? Okay. So thank you, Lisa, for letting me dive in.
Yeah, can I borrow a pen? I'm
Oh,
gonna
yes.
start drawing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, especially because we in general, we just don't realize that a baby's brain is massively taking in information. And we assume they're just kind of this bundle that can't do anything and can't think and can't talk, and so it just isn't aware. And it's just not the case anymore that we've discovered.
Adam, I'm pushing things. I think I might need you to come down. I'm sorry. I can't remember how you chose me to do this. Does anybody know how to make this work?
You had it earlier. What did
I?
you
Did it quicker?
Yes, yay, I saw your hand.
You did? Oh! All right.
Okay.
You can choose your color.
And which way does it go? Is this top?
Shouldn't it light up? Shouldn't it be like, oh, here we go.
Where's my,
Okay. So top is up, there you go. So that's top.
Okay, so. Remember I said at birth, our vital organs are running, but they're waiting for experience. Our neocortex has billions of single neurons waiting for experience to make connections. So think of it like this. With each experience, a neuron fires, fire together, wire together, and in order for it to fire, the experience has to be intense enough to hit its action potential. So if you remember your high school chemistry, it has to be intense enough, and that's where the emotions play a role. It has to either be scary enough, angry enough to hit an action potential, or yummy enough, lovely enough to also hit an action potential. So think of babies' brains are absorbing massive amounts of information, and they're billions of single cells making connections like crazy. So then there ends up trillions of connections, but there it is. With every action potential, every firing it puts out, the axons and dendrites connecting to the next neuron, The more times it has that experience over and over, it's firing every time, making a connection. So baby Susie, she got, oh, every time I cry, my diaper's changed, or I'm fed, or I'm snuggled. It's a positive experience. Oh, and then mom picks me up, and then, ooh, I get some serotonin and dopamine. That feels nice. And then I get to, play with some toys. So you get this really strong pathway. That becomes, think of it as a freeway system that information travels on. That literally becomes it's our mind, it is our beliefs, it's our assumptions about how the world works. So,
can I ask a question? So you talked at the very beginning about how our limbic system kind of picks up a vibe that then shoots down through our body. It informs our body, our feeling. Are these pathways that you're spelling out, does that mean that we then architecturally in our brain are building in a vibe?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we are literally designed, and we have language for it. Have you ever heard this phrase, you could walk into a room and you can cut the tension with a knife? Or, what's another one?
Somebody's a ray of sunshine.
Yes.
Somebody walks in and they're just warm and...
We have kind of colloquial language for this phenomenon. We now know it's physical, tangible, chemical connections and physical, literal neural pathways in our brain. We are fine-tuned social beings to read the environment and absorb that as information. Quantum physics explains it, but I love it, but it's beyond me to understand. But there's quantum communication that's going on. So we are now no longer separate entities, but we're constantly interacting with the environment. And all of that information is connecting neurons and going, okay, this is how the world works. This is how the world works. This is how the world works, over and over and over. And it gets super, super strong. So you imagine a rope. Get a nice thick rope. It's in each of the thirds. Each of the thirds has multiple strings in it, and it's hard to break as opposed to one tiny little thread you can snap pretty easy. Same concept. So for baby Susie, life is pretty good. She consistently had needs met. She consistently was met with nurturing. Now let's say she's at school and somebody's mean to her, so she has a random little experience over here. Well, the brain is designed to be efficient, so it says, that's weird. It doesn't have a whole lot of options. It can't go anywhere from here. It doesn't quite know how to incorporate it, so it just says, okay, well, I'm gonna bring you right on back over here. She must have had a bad day. The world's still good. We're okay. Conversely, baby Joe, his message was constantly, in those first 2 years of life in particular, caregivers are untrustworthy. I don't know if I'm going to get an angry parent or an okay parent. Sometimes when I cry, I'm ignored. The world is kind of scary, kind of scary, kind of scary. Now all of a sudden, baby Joe goes to school, and the teacher's really nice. Baby Joe can't make much sense of that, so he's like, well, just wait. She's going to get angry here at me pretty soon. I'm not that important. So the brain has to align to the neural pathways that are in place. So the timeline, 0 to 2, massive, massive neural connections taking place. Every experience, every emotional vibe, positive or negative, tense or relaxing, all of it is being transcribed to a neural pathway. From at age 2, that's significant because that's roughly 18 months to 2 is when the left hemisphere comes online. And that's logic, linear. It's when babies start forming words. That's the part of the brain that's like, okay, let's make sense of this. Let's try and interact. So that's why it's a significant timeline event. At age 5, roughly, there is a neural pruning that goes on. So imagine this is just, you got trillions of connections going on between all these billions of single cells. The ones that have been reinforced the most consistent, they get myelinated. It's like bringing in concrete conduit and making it lightning fast. Okay, it's permanent at that point. Permanent. Practice makes permanent. Repeated experiences literally make permanent. Not necessarily perfect, but definitely permanent. Those exceptions, those thinner little, 1 or 2 maybe, they get pruned away. Because the brain is designed, it's biologically evolved, itself is evolving and designed for efficiency, to be lightning fast and not have to think about what it's thinking about. It's automation. So things become literally wired into our body so we don't have to cognitively think about it. Fun fact, only 5% of what we are, of our behavior and our being, is stored and exhibited through our conscious mind, our neocortex. 95% has been wired into our body. It's why we react and we yell when we know better. It's like, why did I do that? Because it's wired into our automatic reactions, and the system is way faster than our conscious mind. Because, again, for survival, when something's coming at you, you don't want to pause and think, oh, is this going to hurt me or not? You want to react. It's a biological, amazing system. So at 5, there's a pruning away of all of the thinner pathways, the really strong ones, the ones that have been repeated and repeated over time and are most consistent, are now permanent. So, we have a saying there, everything I ever needed to know in life I learned by kindergarten. The operating base of who we are and how we are has been established and set by the time we were 5 years old. How our being in the world. Good news is, it doesn't stop there. So, from 5 to then about 15, relatively quiet neurobiologically. It's just kind of going through life, gaining more experience, incorporating a few more pathways. I mean, to the day we die, good news, the day we die, the brain is constantly making connections. It's just, if we put some conscious intention to it, we can create some new pathways, or it's just going to reinforce what's already there. At 15, there's another massive neural pruning. Maybe when we're done, we can pull up the different stages. There's a really good visual that I have found that shows the brains at different stages. So this is why teenagers are teenagers, why they seem so crazy to the rest of us. They're literally, it's chaos in the mind. They don't know it, they can't feel it, they think they know it all. But another massive pruning of these exceptions here. So,
can I say something?
Yes, please.
I think that's a really, really good point as to why we need to have kids in preschool. and in environments where they're socially active and learn some of those self-regulation skills and those social skills. So as a school that has a preschool, this is information I'm really going to hammer in to my district in terms of brain research, because that's really, really crucially, essentially what we're trying to do with preschool before that age 5. And I didn't have that piece of information, so I thank you.
Yeah, well, and it also speaks to why with a preschool program, it's so helpful to support our parents of young children, because I mean, they need the training and the support as well, because it is fundamentally a foundation for the rest of life. So as our timeline continues, 25 is the next neurobiologically significant landmark, because at 25, finally, our neocortex is mature and fully developed. It takes 25 years roughly before we have the full capacity of our critical thinking, our executive function. So we're asking a lot of our kids, particularly our kids with high ACEs, the trauma-informed, a lot of trauma in their background, where it makes absolutely perfect sense to be hypervigilant. If you come from a home where you don't know if you spill the milk, if you're going to get slapped across the head, or you don't know if mom and dad are going to fight, if there's violence at all, or lots of yelling. If you come from a home where your constant experience is, I need to keep my head down because I don't know what's coming, that kid, their private logic makes sense. It's a highly adaptive response to the environment they grew up in. But now put that kid in school, expect him or her to sit still, and it's like, I can't sit still because I don't know where the next threat is coming from. They are, think ADHD. They are hypersensitive to, well, what's coming from over here? Oh, there's a fast movement over there. I mean, they are hypervigilant, and it is utterly counterintuitive to just focus on math. Now, think too about the action potential that it takes to fire something. If you come from a background that's unpredictable, full of trauma, how much attention are you going to pay to a nice piece of art, coloring? That is not going to hit an action potential. Studying for math, that is not going to hit an action potential, because their system is hypersensitive and stuck. It's harder to come back down, stuck in a place where they're constantly looking and hearing and sensing, and so-and-so making a funny face at me, or Jimmy doesn't like me because he won't give his, we're asking a lot of our kids who have come from a lot of trauma. So to say, well, they know the rules, we've practiced them over and over, so-and-so should know that they keep their hands to themselves, or, yeah, they do. They know in their neocortex, which is not fully mature yet, what they do, which is in the doing part of our brain, the limbic region. It's a faster, more reliable system, and it is permanent, lightning fast. And it's, when you start to understand, okay, there's private logic here, you can start asking questions, you can normalize, you can validate, you can confirm. Okay, that makes sense. I understand why you did that. Then you can say, okay, let's create an exception to your rule. But at school, we do this. And then instead of punishing the student for not being able to do something, instead of punishing them for for doing what has become very adaptive according to their biology, you help them learn and let a new experience. You develop, I call it option B, or an exception to the rule. And you gotta understand this, especially for our traumatized kiddos, this has kept them safe. It is biologically really hard to argue with that. This is reliable. It is literally in their fabric of their being. They can trust this. And it's going to get hijacked. Anytime they're stressed, they're going to get hijacked into this system because they don't want to have to think about it. This is going to take a lot of time, patience, training, second chances, third chances, 15th chances to practice the right thing until it becomes a nice, strong option. Now we've got option A and option B that they can choose if they have practice choosing and shifting, and there's a strong, you've got to get into that parasympathetic, you've got to reduce the stress. Because, fun fact I forgot to mention, once your fight or flight is triggered, once that limbic region assesses threat, literally cuts off communication to our prefrontal cortex, where all of our thinking happens. It literally says, okay, I got this. This is the threatening situation. Go. Literally no communication. So to ask a kid, what were you thinking? I don't know. I wasn't thinking. And they weren't. They were reacting. So, thought.
Well, a question. So if we could take a break.
Yes.
Say a 10-minute break and then come back, and we're here until 7.
Okay.
Did you want to have I didn't want to derail your thought, and then I've been thinking something that I'd like to share.
No, this is a good time.
So I want to bring in resilience.
Yes.
Because there are a number of those moms in Dr. Thayer's study who were exposed to discrimination and their children still went back. They were resilient. And their children still went back to baseline quickly. And one of the things that in schools, we have other projects in our center that we're working with currently that focus on restorative practices. And one of the reasons for it is because there are so many ways that families, even in the midst, Elizabeth, as you were pointing out, even in the midst of poverty, even in the midst of institutional marginalization and trauma, even in the midst of generational trauma, those families are loving, those families are strong, those families are connected. There are so many assets within that family. The challenge is when those families and those children go to school, and these strong connections that you're pointing out, Lisa, don't get fired in that context. Because the buffers, the resilience, these pathways that children have developed with families where they are proud to be who they are. They are reinforced for being who they are. They feel really good about being who they are not pathways that get fired when they're in school.
Yes.
And one of the challenges there can be the mismatch between who the children are supported to be in that particular cultural milieu of school.
It's very confusing because we're fundamentally wired to be as social beings. Social belonging is, it's not something that, oh, that's nice. It is literally biologically wired into us as survival. Somebody in isolation doesn't survive. So school becomes the tribe, the social belonging, and you're there a huge amount of hours out of your day. And kids, they want to, they will do well when they can, and if they can, and they want to please. So yes, when you're confronted with a whole different set of ideologies and thinking processes, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't fit there and now I'm confused because this is really strong and I
Ways
wanted-
of talking, ways
Yes.
of being are fundamentally those that feel strong and rich and yummy are not mirrored in school, in how people speak with one another, in how people relate with one another, in
Pictures
how
you
people
see in
be.
books.
That's right,
Yeah.
every way. So one of the questions that I would ask all of us is, thinking about equity, if we think about the brain architecture, Lisa, that you're talking with us about, how do we shift the question we ask about how do we support our children if we think about what are the things for this child that allow them to stay on these strong, yummy pathways because of who they are and how they're raised in their family? What are the implications of that for our educational settings? And if we're going to answer that, we need to know what for that child is really positive and feels really good when that child is most in their element. And if it's not at school, where is it and how do we bring that in to inform our learning environments?
Well, Heather, I was going to interject that too earlier, that in just thinking about title schools versus non-title schools and the shift from the traditional way of teaching to this workshop model, the workshop model totally caters to that different pathways kind of a thing where they're active and they're all over the place.
So why don't we take a break? Let's take a 10-minute break, come back, and we'll dive back in. Yeah. Work life. What does this mean for real life application?
So, want to pick up just a bit on the impact of the fact that consistent experiences create permanent pathways in our mind, the impact that that has on equity. This gets to our fundamental humanity. This is how every brain works. So when you can understand that every person has private logic, every person has a context in which their behavior makes sense, then you can start asking questions like, okay, so where is that adaptive? How is that adaptive? How can I meet them where they are and help them bridge that gap? So it's fun to think in terms of, for me, in terms of how every brain develops, because it just kind of is the great equalizer. So wanting to shift, yes, now to, okay, what do you do with all of this information? What does it look like?
You're a school psychologist,
School counselor,
yep,
and you work with a K through 12.
K-12.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of children at different ages,
Different
developmental
developmental
phases.
stages, yes.
How do you bring this into your work?
So, one of the more dramatic, visible experiences I had was last year working with, he was a junior at the time. Imagine, I believe it was his 5th birthday. Mom ODs, dies. Dad was Mexican, got deported out of the picture, so no dad. Mom dies on his 5th birthday, goes into foster care. He's half Hispanic, half Caucasian. Goes into foster care. I'm not sure exactly how many years he's in there, but then he gets adopted into a very rural, very conservative white family. Tries to fit in, but he is lyrical, he is musical, he is talkative, he has a personality that fills a room, and he just likes to talk. He's a verbal processor. So his experience in the classroom was when he started feeling nervous, he verbally connected with people. He needed to talk. So that looks like, hey, so-and-so, he was the class clown, constantly in trouble. He was the troublemaker in the classroom, constantly kicked out for talking. So he's in my office last year, kicked out for talking, and he's just sharing he's just deflated and frustrated, and he doesn't understand why it's just such a problem for him. And so I look at him and I said, you know what I really like about you? And he just instantly locks eyes, like hanging on every word. Like, what could you possibly say that you like about me? Because every other teacher has just voiced this frustration over him. And I said, man, you are skilled. You have a skill at connecting with people. And he had never heard it in that context. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, tell me what happens when you get a little nervous or you feel like your buddy's getting a little nervous. And he said, well, I want people to be happy, so I'll tell a joke. Exactly. You want those around you to feel good. So you get goofy, you start talking, I said, that is a gift and the world needs that. And he was just, he was soaking it up. But it kind of aligned as well with his, even though he was the last several years in a very Caucasian family, it really aligned with his heritage of just coming from a very communicative and verbal culture. So he and I came up with, okay, let's use this. We just need to channel this. This is a skill. What system can we come up with? Because he was also in my psychology class, and he was So I said, what do you need when you start feeling a little antsy? What do you think you need in that moment? How can I let you know, hey, you're being really effective at getting lots of attention and kind of calming your nerves, but it's taking all the attention away from me. So we came up with a system where when he started feeling a little nervous and antsy, like if he had huge gaps in his education because he was constantly getting kicked out of class. So there was a lot that he struggled with reading the textbook. A lot that academically just triggered his nervousness. So we came up with a hand signal. He would just, on the slide, kind of let me know it's building. And we had talked about, how do you know you're feeling stressed? What does that feel like in your body? How do you know that you need to just, what is that urge to turn and talk to your buddy? So we'd catch that, and he would let me know, okay, I'm getting this way. So then I would incorporate this turn and talk to your buddy. Tell them what you just heard and incorporate it within the lesson. And then we came up with a signal where I could let him know, it was, if he was just getting too rowdy and it wasn't appropriate for me to weave something like that in, he said, well, if you just come and, just stand by me, which I thought was really interesting because it was proximity. And he would eventually, it took a while, was not a smooth transition, but we were able to work with his system and meet his needs, and he could pay attention, he could attend. By the end of the year, he wrote a 5-page paper and it made sense. He actually read the textbook and he could do it. And he was so proud of himself. So that is how I incorporate some of this, just understanding what he's doing. It's a behavior issue when you assume kids should make my world easier. You should be able to sit still, be quiet. I should be able to talk, and you should just hang on my every word and soak it up like a little sponge. That's, man, all of us educators in the room, how nice would that be? It's biologically incongruent. So when you understand how the brain works, how behavior is information, and it's cueing you into their private logic and where their needs are and where their growth edges are. You can have those conversations, ask those questions, meet those needs in really creative ways.
Can you talk about how you walk through the halls of your school? What does your face look like and why?
Okay, yes. So some of my childhood development, I got a lot of feedback as a teenager that I have a really intense face and that I'm intimidating. And so as I went through my counseling program and learned body language and all of that and the importance of disarming people, and I really learned to use that. So I very intentionally walk through the halls, just instead of mission, it's just a slight softening, intentional about constantly having, a smile on my face, greeting students by name, hey, and remembering little details like, hey, how was the track meet? And hey, how was your birthday party? And our entire population of K-12 is now 202 students, so I have a luxury of being able to know all of them. But to the degree that there's a sixth grader who she calls me Mrs. Happy. Because, and I asked her one time, like, how did you come up with that? She's like, every time I see you, you just look so happy and you're smiling. And it's on purpose. It's being very intentional in my environment. What is really fun, and I've been talking to my 7th grade girls about it, is because emotional vibe is literally, it's a peptide, it's a physical, tangible, chemical compound. It has an electromagnetic frequency. Every alive thing, everything has an electromagnetic frequency. Interestingly enough, the positive emotions have a higher electromagnetic frequency and the negative emotions have a lower electromagnetic frequency. And I have it's a straight up little crystal bead on a string, and I show them. I say, man, if you hold it and you just swing it back and forth, and I say things like, I love my life, I love my job, I love seeing all the students. All by itself, it starts swinging to the right because Northern Hemisphere, North Pole, our water swirls to the right. Our hurricanes swirl to the right. Southern Hemisphere, South Pole, everything goes the other way to the left. It's electromagnetic frequency. So I say these positive affirmations and it swings to the right. And while it's swinging, I shift and I say, I hate my life. It sucks. I am so stupid. And it not only stops the inertia, it will start swinging the other way. And they're just minds blown. I mean, they just think I've got some kind of magic. I'm like, no. It is straight up chemistry and physics, biology. It is electromagnetic frequency. And their mind is blown because they can physically see a connection between thoughts, words. So I'll have them practice and like, okay, don't even say it out loud, just say it in your head. And I have them realize, I don't even believe my life sucks, and I could make it swing the other way. So I said the example there is, you're teasing with a buddy. You're just joking around. You're such a dork. You're so stupid. You may not even believe it, but the words, the thoughts that are required to form those words have chemical signatures in our brain carrying electromagnetic frequencies that physically impact our environment. It's just mind-blowing. So it kind of goes off of neurobiology into quantum physics there a bit. But it's tangible.
Can you talk about the percentage of information that we gather in a millisecond?
Oh, goodness gracious.
That affects our heart.
That is also mind-blowing, yes. So we take in information from our 5 senses, sight, sound, ears, touch, all of that. Phenomenal bits of information coming in constantly from our environment. We can only act on and filter, so much. So a lot is outside of our consciousness, but our body is taking it in and processing it and operating on it below our conscious level. So again, 95% of our behavior is unconscious. It's pre-programmed. It's there's private logic there, and it is physical and biological. So, application for you that you can use is, if you remember I said at birth, our right hemisphere is taking an emotional vibe. You can use your right brain, your state of being. You can tap into your parasympathetic system. Take a deep breath. Let them resonate to your right brain. We are wired to resonate right brain to right brain through this electromagnetic frequency. You can physically use that to change the atmosphere in the room. I mean, it goes to cadence of your voice. The more stressed we are, the faster we talk, and the more high-pitched we get. Oh. So if you slow that down, talk a little in a lower registry, you can use that to non-verbally communicate with them, and their system is going to respond to it and go, oh, okay. Another example, we had a 3rd grader in our office. I reluctantly maybe applied a diagnosis, definitely oppositional defiant, well on her way to some psychopathic tendencies. She's got some stuff she's dealing with, a lot of trauma. She was back in the office, and the assistant vice principal was in there. They called me in because the administration of my school has picked up on the fact that I have a rather calming effect on the students. So I'm in there with SPED director, vice principal, so it's 3 adults, one tiny little 3rd grader. Her system's firing, she's agitated, and the SPED director is kind of hammering her with questions. What were you thinking? Why did you do this? And the girl starts kind of curling up and rocking and saying, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. And as she escalated, the adult with the authority escalated, and they just, pretty soon the SPED director just says, well, now you're making me angry. I'm just thinking, okay. And I asked, hey, can I talk to so-and-so for a second and excuse the other adults? And I just exhaled out loud. Inhale actually stimulates our sympathetic system. Exhale stimulates our parasympathetic, our calm down system. So to even hear someone exhale, it's like, okay, I can relax. Just intentionally got into my happy place. Gave her a moment to just pause, slow the pace down, let her resonate to my right hemisphere. Pretty soon her body language opens up a little bit, and she's able to articulate, they stress me out. I'm like, man, me too, I know. And then she's talking. So you can use this information to engage and communicate with the 95% of their unconscious system, help their sympathetic system calm down so they can open communication up to their prefrontal cortex. They can get into their reasoning. Then you can strategize, okay, so what do you think would help? And then get them creating and give them some autonomy in their world, and let's experiment. Let's try this. What would that look like? And and all of a sudden they're engaged in the process.
There was something that you mentioned last class about how we pick up information in someone else's face, and it affects the function of our heart and lungs.
Yes. So, anybody familiar with polyvagal theory? Vagus nerve? Okay, so the reason the brainstem is so important, and the fact that it's mature at birth, we have cranial nerves in our brainstem that, remember that autonomic nervous system slide I had where it literally sends nerves to all of our vital organs? The 10th cranial nerve has nerve endings that come from the back and come forward into our visual system that is specialized to reading faces, because the first thing babies look for is mom's face. So we are biologically programmed to pay attention to faces, and they've done lots of experiments where, baby looks at an object versus a face and they choose a face every single time. Our biological system is designed to read faces really well. So that 10th cranial nerve goes up into that system that's, if you think about it, all of our emotions, you tell emotion by what's on the face. That then goes down through the vital organs. What's interesting is 80% of the nerves that go into our cardiovascular, heart and lungs, 80% of the nerve endings that go to the lungs are from that 10th cranial nerve, the nerve that is directly tied to faces. So we are biologically wired to look and see, is this person for me or against me? Like it's a 10th of a second, fractions of a second. Our brain is processing all of that information completely below any sort of conscious level. So again, imagine you're an adult, you're going through your world, you've got lesson plans to get to, you guys have lots of homework to get to. I mean, we have stresses, and if you're not conscious and aware, we carry that in our body and on our face. Little systems, especially those traumatized, are highly sensitive to perceiving threat. So they're looking at faces going, is this face focused and task oriented? Are they mad at me? Are they, versus this person's calm, they're safe, I can talk to them, they're open, they're gonna listen to me. So it's quite fascinating that we are so socially designed, so wired and built to perceive social emotional information into the very fabric of our being. So, you get a kiddo who is of a minority heritage, and they do life and family one way at home, and then they come to school and everything is different, and the teacher's tone of voice is different, and the cadence of their voice is different, and the pace of life is different, and the expectations are different. And our systems are constantly looking for congruence, and when there's a mismatch, the body perceives it as, this is threatening, I don't know what to do with it, it's confusing, it triggers the stress response. Yeah.
My understanding, I don't remember the research, but that nerve is very sensitive, but that in addition to that, children, in particular adolescents, have not had enough experiences to accurately read the facial expressions. Mm-hmm. So what we may perceive as adults to see happiness, an adolescent and maybe younger even will fundamentally misread that facial expression.
Yes.
So it's attuned to it, and they don't always read them accurately.
It's not very nuanced yet. It's very categorical, good, bad.
So when kids say everybody hates me,
yes,
they actually believe
They
that.
believe that.
They're not being dramatic.
Yeah, no, they fundamentally believe that. That's why it's so important to help kids, to coach them with feeling words, give them a broader variety of nuanced feelings. I recently just chatted with my 5th graders about feelings and feeling words and how you can use your feelings as a information system. And the example I gave them was, when you only know there's vanilla and chocolate ice cream, you have 2 choices when you go to the ice cream store. Eventually that gets pretty boring, and you're looking at everybody else going, well, what's that, what's that, what's that? But all you know is chocolate and vanilla. But I said, all of a sudden, if I tell you, well, within the chocolate category, you've got mint chocolate chip, you've got Rocky Road, you've got gooey fudge, whatever, there are nuances to chocolate. All of a sudden, what? I can now communicate my needs to a more dialed in degree. So yeah, kids, especially, again, our traumatized kids who, they don't have that luxury, that privilege of a parent who has maybe nuanced language themselves, but has the time and patience to, when they're upset, to just calm down and say, hey, I notice you're frustrated. That makes sense, and give the child language to their feeling, which is a right-left integration step. Yeah, they categorically believe everybody hates me.
You had mentioned earlier, if my brain is blank, then I read faces. Do all children just read faces, or traumatized children more hyper-aware? Because I have an African-American student who's in 2nd grade, and I'm writing a BSP right now, behavior support plan, and I'm trying to put in language about perception, because she perceives that particularly EAs in her classroom dislike her. And so she'll do unkind things, not without any kind of provocation. Stomp on their foot.
See.
Yeah, at least that we can see. Yes, there may be implicit bias.
Well, there's private logic in there somewhere. So if whatever she is detecting and perceiving, her system is detecting and perceiving, it somehow makes sense in what she has experienced. Therefore, her whole biological programming is going to be geared toward defense or even offense. I need to get you away before you get me. So there's some private logic in there somewhere, and if you can ask questions, if you can help her even see that, connect those behavior dots, there's somewhere it makes sense in her world. But yeah, we are, as humans, highly sensitized to faces. There is a degree, those on the Asperger spectrum, that system is not working as well, so that they struggle getting informational cues, social, emotional, informational cues. But those kiddos who either have been traumatized or not even traumatized, but marginalized and trying to fit into a world that doesn't quite make sense, they're going to really struggle with, how do I interpret this? Maybe there was a connection with the teacher, but the aides, they kind of come and go, and I don't know them as well, and they tell me to do stuff, but I don't know if I trust them. So there's stuff in there that makes sense somewhere. Why are you shaking your head? What was that thought?
Oh, I mean, I have a 5-year-old in kindergarten in a class where there are 2 Black kids in this classroom of 26, and the one other child who looks like him, like he says, was adopted by white parents. So although she looks like him, she doesn't have parents like him. So literally, he's the only child that has 2 Black parents and is Black in a kindergarten class in Gillow. elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
So in that neighborhood, it's a neighborhood school, so the demographic is fairly white. And so being in a school where you can be identified, you know. And then he's like very extroverted and, you know, and so with that, he felt different. So there's that identity thing already, and getting in trouble a lot of trouble. Eventually, so I'm shaking my head here because like, eventually he kept saying, well, I'm bad. Like, everybody says I'm bad. And everybody thinks I'm bad. So then he starts being bad. Like, he starts finding trouble. And then he starts using words, because we don't speak English at home. We speak a native language at home. So I know words that we use in the house. And so when he starts using certain words, I know that it's not from the house. And so I'm like, where did you hear this word from? Well, my friend said it to me. But most of the time, like, sometimes the teachers are not able to pick that. Like, the moment when another child does certain things to him. And so he does it, and then he's seen, because he's like, he's easy to spot out, you know. So eventually the child starts thinking, well, this is really who I am. And so that affects him a lot. Instead of affecting him academically, like, so I really understood when you were talking about that child who was raised in a rural area where it was affecting him in class. He didn't fit in, and stuff like that. So eventually we realized also that he wasn't being challenged academically. We had to push so hard to get them to give him a challenging work. So what was happening in class was, if you give him something that was easy, he wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
And he would be distracting
Fell
other
below
kids.
the action potential, and neurons were not firing.
Yeah, so because in class, before he went to school, he knew his ABCs, he knew his 1, 2, 3s, he knew how to write his name. Now he goes to school and they're learning all of that over again, and he's bored. And then he's finding trouble, right? But as a Black child, well, we face him, I mean, to be honest, like, there's some biases where he's not expected to be that good. Okay, the system doesn't really, and it's not that everybody does that. It's just by surveying, I've read a lot about this. And the more reason why I'm doing this course, actually, because I'm really studying my child and the system. And we had to speak up and say, you need to rather give him the more challenging work, and when he's done, he's going to do the easy work. It took meetings, a lot of meetings with the principal, the PE teacher, like everybody on a round table twice before he was tested for the Gifted and Talented program, and before he was given books to read, and by their own experience, oh, he reads a 2nd grade level. Wow. We told you. Yes. You didn't believe us. Like, it was, so there are situations like that where when a kid believes that I don't fit in, it's hard, you know, like that behavior, and then they start like finding trouble just to be recognized, like, just so there's attention on that child, because he doesn't feel like I'm giving attention. So,
Well, and there's what you're touching on. There's again, being biological entities.
Yeah.
There's a complexity where we have to live in homeostasis, which means the inside has to match the outside.
Yeah.
So I explain this to my students who are cutting. Cutting is not necessarily a I want to die activity. It's there is so much psychological pain on the inside. I need the pain on the outside to match. So he's experiencing some information that he's perceiving as I'm bad, therefore I need to then match that. So there's homeostasis, because when things are not congruent, we physically can't tolerate that sensation. So oddly, whatever that is, we will, even when it's destructive, we're biologically compelled
to find homeostasis. And then my other thought was, and as you were sharing that story, is a component that is also biologically wired into us is identification of same and other. So I like to speak about equity issues, racial issues, cultural issues in terms of other, because it isn't always just one group or that group. It's categorically, biologically other, because we're wired to identify. We have mirror neurons. They're fun to talk about, a whole other conversation. We're fundamentally wired to find same, mom's face, same, comfort, safety, I'm okay with you, I see me in you, you in me, this feels good, I trust you. Anything other is, the body it is perceived as threat. I don't know what to expect there. Therefore, that is threatening, and I that's where our implicit biases come from. I tell my psychologists, we just have them. It is not good, bad, wrong, indifferent. We have them. The brain has to categorize information, because otherwise we'd be on information overload. When you understand the development, it's there. Every single human has a bias. A bias is a preconceived notion. It is literally the neural pathway that has been most consistent. So when you grow up in a environment, in a culture that is pretty homogeneous, you don't have a whole lot of experiences with other people that look other, act other. The most fundamental sensation is in your brain is people that look the same. Feel good, feel calm, feel trustworthy. I can anticipate your behavior. So anything that looks other is a ugh. And it is below consciousness, it's lightning fast, it just is.
So a question, so imagine you are working with the other staff and the teachers at Bernice's son's school. How do you work with them so they can be of more support to Bernice's son, so that he is not subject to low expectations, so that he can walk in that building and know that every face, this is my ideal, right? This is all of our ideal. Every face he looks at, all of those white faces, that for him, given his family, may, from the first day he went into kindergarten, although being raised in a predominantly white community, he may not have that experience of whiteness as other. Perhaps, I don't know. But how would you talk with the adults in that building so that from the moment he walks in that building, he feels supported, he feels that everyone knows how smart he is, they're conspiring for his success, and they are proud of him and believe in him? What conversation, how would you, given your understanding and of the biological underpinnings, what would you say to all of the adults in that building so that they can be better allies to you and your husband?
So it starts with educating them on brain development and how the brain categorizes information and how we create the sensation of same and other, and how it's not quote unquote wrong. It's just how our brain has to categorize the massive amount of information we get. So we have to be aware that we have those biases. We just do.
So is that to move the staff who are most predominantly white?
You've got
Are
to
they all white?
shift.
Well, so his social skills, so they're working on social skills now, keep your hands to yourself, and that lady happens to be a Black woman. So I don't know, it's now that you're talking about same and other, it's kind of, I'm now trying to understand why he's doing really well with this woman, taking him out of class sometimes, and just taking him through reading, the same reading that his teacher used to do with him, but it didn't work. Because 2 teachers in the class are both white. So, but then this woman takes him out of the class and does the same reading, the social skills and everything. And somehow, like, over the past 2 months, like, we've not had any problem. So, and like, it's constant emailing. And now that we are talking and being advocates for him and like kids like that, it's just, they are attentive. So from the secretary in the class, in the office, to the school counselor, to the educational assistants, instructional assistants, like all of them know that the parents are on top of this, or constantly emailing, and I'm there on Thursdays every week. And so just being there in his life and constantly asking questions, and now I feel like there is a communal support for him in the school. Where like everybody, from the music teacher, we send emails and everybody CC'd, and so I want to know how he's doing in every class. And so the principal is going to ask all of them to respond to that email. So even if we don't meet as a group, there is an email where we get to know like feedback and everything. So by doing that, like there is that support now, and he's doing. Initially, it was just if you do well this week and you get this point, you get to have a baking date with Grandma Martha, who was a principal in one of the schools. So not related, but it's a Black woman, older, who can be my mother, is now his grandmother, who we didn't know from anywhere. So he has that too. So just little things, you know. But Grandma Martha was away for a month. How come you didn't have a problem at school? Something must have changed, you know.
So too, we only have a few minutes.
Yeah.
So what I hear you proposing, Lisa, is something that we do in our work as well, which is speaking about stereotype threat and Claude Steele's work. I deeply believe, and
We will start next class with class discussion, with small group discussion, I promise.
there are ways that the shame and blame that can set in, which immediately gets us into limbic hijack, can work when white people who are unaccustomed to working with students who are not white, and I'm not describing anybody here, right? So I genuinely mean this, that I feel like there is a way that stereotype threat can work, where there is a fear of, oh God, I'm going to be perceived as racist. It's a stereotype of white equals racist, and white people do a number on themselves because it all of a sudden gets into limbic hijack. And it's not only white people, it's anybody who is in any situation where there is a fear or an expectation of a negative stereotype. And for whites, the negative stereotype is white equals racist, right? So that stereotype threat kicks in, all of a sudden, all of the smart thinking that is needed by all of those brilliant white educators to think well about a Black child in their school gets hijacked, and they're not fully present to be part of the solution. That's at least a potential implication of Claude Steele's work. When we think about stereotype threat, they were not able to fully show up. Now, when I hear you talk, right, the limbic hijack. So when I hear you talking about the biological in terms of the implications, shame and blame doesn't get any of us anywhere. All of us are desperately needed, deeply needed to bring our best selves, to think well about every single child and the uniqueness of each child. And your son has so much that he's bringing to that school. And you and your husband are activating everybody. That entire school is going to be a better school for every single child because of not just you and your husband stepping up, but because they're getting over potential limbic hijack to bring all of themselves to the table so they can be their most thoughtful prefrontal cortex people in response. Because that system isn't serving anybody, least of all your son, right? But that is a story that is true of this nation.
It is true here at the University of Oregon, right? How do we help ourselves in any situation so we can be fully thoughtful, we can be fully responsive, we can be fully with each other. In the solutions, I'm not saying solutions are only in breathing, but it does help us to get to a point where we can then engage our prefrontal cortex to remember that we can do this. We can access our thinking about equity. We can access our thinking about all of the areas of specialization that each of you have invested tremendous years in becoming masters of, that you can then bring to bear in being part of the solution. And then we can turn to each other and say, I want to be a part of the solution. Let's think about what that looks like. Because equity is local. It's where we are. It's in this room. And what do you all think is a path forward? And it sounds like your son's school is doing that. And we all can be inspired by that example. Yeah? Okay. So, and invariably there are going to be bumps in the road. So, how do we then engage fundamentally biologically in ways where we can be fully present to then take the next steps? So we will begin next class with questions for all of you to be thinking about with one another. And the questions are in the PowerPoint slides. And what I'm going to ask all of you to do is to go to the PowerPoint slides and look at the questions for discussion at the very end. And just be kind of mulling those questions in your minds. One of them is about what struck you about today's class. What struck you about some of the insights Lisa shared? What stayed with you? What struck you? That's the first question for all of you to share with one another. The second question is, what are the implications?
Thank you. There, aha! If equity is provided, so thinking about equity, what are the implications of understanding the brain for thinking about equity in education? How do we get from brain architecture to equity in education? Like what is that? How do we do that? What are your ideas? And finally, thinking about the Steele readings, thinking about stereotype threat. It's a powerful concept, right? It's really a power. I find it incredibly compelling and it frees me up. Because I think, oh, what's going on in this environment that might be triggering a negative stereotype that I'm afraid other people hold about me? And how might I be, and then I underperform, fulfilling the negative stereotype? Whoa! But how can we reverse that? How can we flip that on its head? So we can be in a situation where we think, ooh, I could be falling into this stereotype threat. But I'm going to be engaging my prefrontal cortex, and now what are the possibilities? That's one idea, but Claude Steele, he's brilliant. There are brilliant chapters, so much there to connect. How do you all connect it? So let's start next class with all of you talking with one another about this,
Okay, agreed?
Yes.
Any ways to make this better?
At 4 or 4:30.
4:30. 4:30. We are starting at 4:30. I got no emails from anybody saying that 4:30 to 7 was bad. There is not a deadline on that. If you're discovering it's bad, let me know. Okay.
Good.